listing employees to go, whether they are local or they are foreign. They might implement measures to try and keep these workers for a bit longer until the situation stabilizes and they have a better sense of what to expect.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, we're kicking off April in the red with the stock 600 sliding 2.9%, the FTSE down 3.4% and the DAX down 3.2% in Frankfurt. It follows a down day in Asian stocks where PMIs across most of the region showed contraction. And speaking of those PMIs, we've just gotten manufacturing data out of Spain showing that it slowed to 45.7 in March. That's down from 50.4 in February. So a contraction for Spanish manufacturing there. Now, if we look at some of the stocks specific, Munich Re has slumped after pulling its guidance, currently down 3.8%. Continental similarly down 6.4% after dropping its outlook. We're also seeing HSBC and Standard Chartered significantly lower. It follows drops in their Hong Kong trading as well after they suspended dividend payments. Now, US futures are also sliding this morning. This as President Trump is warning of a painful 2 weeks ahead for the US as it grapples with the coronavirus. That is why we are seeing US Treasuries gaining across the curve. The 10-year yield sliding 8 basis points to 59 basis points. 10-year bond yields down 5 basis points, negative 52. 10-year gilt yields down 6 basis points at 29 basis points. The dollar is advancing on investor demand. Of course, the new quarter is kicking off, currently up 0.5%. The yen is holding at 107.6. The Kiwi selling off, though, on concerns over government debt, currently down 0.8%. Sterling and the euro both weak. Sterling down 0.6% at 123. Finding commodities, oil fluctuating around $20 a barrel after wrapping up its worst quarter on record. WTI now at $20.47 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Anne Garrins with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. According to researchers here in the UK, a loss of smell or taste may be a sign that you have coronavirus. A team at King's College London looked at responses from more than 400,000 people reporting suspected symptoms to an app. But the loss of smell and taste are also signs of other respiratory infections, such as a common cold. Experts say fever and cough remain the most important symptoms to look out for and act upon. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has appealed to younger people to take the nation's lockdown seriously. She says that while potentially not suffering the worst symptoms of coronavirus, 20 to 29-year-olds are the key group transmitting the disease. The country now has 708 confirmed cases of the virus and recorded its first death at the weekend. And confirmation the Wimbledon Championships will be cancelled for the very first time since the Second World War is indeed expected today. The All England club are in emergency meetings to discuss their response to the coronavirus pandemic. The competition is due to run for 2 weeks from the 29th of June. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Now, let's turn to banks where the dividend cuts continue as companies hoard cash and succumb to pressure from regulators. UK banks have been scrapping their plans for payouts and buybacks. The latest to do so include HSBC and Standard Chartered, with both slipping in Hong Kong trading earlier. For more, we're joined by Bloomberg Intelligence senior banks analyst Jonathan Tice. Jonathan, good to have you with us. How much have investors already discounted the prospect of dividend cuts at banks?
Well, if you look at the reaction of the Hong Kong shares, HSBC and Standard Chartered, they were down 9-10% today, which is a little bit of an anomaly because in most cases I think investors were very aware this was coming. But bear in mind, in Hong Kong you've got a very large retail investor base. So unfortunately, as the old adage goes about the retail investor being the last one in just before a sell-off, I don't think they were fully aware of kind of what was going on in terms of income from their bank stocks.
Yeah, it's an interesting moment, Jonathan, because in some ways, I mean, you could understand perhaps the banks being a little bit more perhaps bullish than they seem, given what may come as a result of this. The down the line, things may be rather better for them. But at the moment, it does look very, very bearish for this sector, and the pressures are very considerable.
Absolutely. I think the biggest issues we've got at the moment is we have absolutely no visibility on revenues, because we've seen rate cuts globally. We know activity's fallen off a cliff. We know that the regulators have stepped up and said, tell you what, this accounting rule we changed called IFRS 9, which after the last crisis meant before, when you see losses coming, you have to accrue for them in advance. The bad debt pain, the regulators have done everything they can to ease. But the issue you've still got is what on earth is the revenue stream going forward, all the fees. If mortgage activity stopped, take the UK, take Hong Kong, you can't even go and view a property. I mean, there is a massive glut, and the pipeline will be down for months and months. So from a bank's perspective, the dividend cuts, the PRA has said, this isn't about capital really, because we're not doing this because we think you're going to erode your capital buffers. We're doing this because we need you to step back and wait and see what happens effectively.
So what happens next then, Jonathan? Bonus cuts, potentially job cuts?
Well, again, the PRA, I mean, we've written something this morning, or yesterday we wrote it, about the fact that they can't carry out a lot of the job cuts yet because it's totally unacceptable, and rightly, an awful lot of the banks, the HSBCs, Lloyds have said, you know what, the 35, 40,000 people we said we're going to cut, we're going to put on hold. But down the line, those cuts and more will have to come. So what does happen next is absolutely what the PRA has done today, which is no cash bonuses. Clearly, banks will be able to pay with deferred compensation, deferred promises, shares, etc. But I think what happens next is we have to wait for first and second quarter results, because it won't be this quarter, and bear in mind most banks report in the first quarter, to get any idea what they think the pipeline for revenue is. Because until they understand kind of what the revenue run rate looks like, they haven't got any idea what they need to adjust the cost base down to. And the one thing they can't do right now is sack people, so they have to attack the variable compensation base, which is bonuses.
All right, Jonathan, thanks very much indeed. Jonathan Tice there, Bloomberg Intelligence, senior banks analyst, reflecting on what has been a very difficult moment, the suspension of dividends being a clear symptom of it, and the doubt that exists really in banks as to how the rest of the year is going to play out. But how are the markets playing out this morning, Nara?
Well, if we take a look at some of these bank stocks that we've been hearing from this morning, I mean, Barclays is down 4.9%. We heard from Jonathan about what a hit HSBC and Stanchart shares took in the Hong Kong session. HSBC in London down 7.6%. Generally, we're also seeing a down day for markets after the worst quarter for global equities since the financial crisis. The Stock 600 is lower by 3.3%, so extending losses, and US futures also in the red. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street kicks off a new quarter with investors hoping they can leave the worst of the losses in the rearview mirror. The S&P had its worst quarter since the financial crisis, tumbling 20% since January 1st. The Dow was down more than 23%, the most since 1987. We're about to get a sense of how disastrous the coronavirus pandemic has been for car makers. An analyst at Edmunds says the whole world is turned upside down. The firm expects car sales for March to slow to a yearly rate of less than 12 million. That would be the worst reading in almost a decade. Apple is asking retail store employees to temporarily become remote tech support staff. That's irking some workers who thought they would be paid for simply staying home. Staffers you might otherwise see at the Genius Bar if Apple stores were open are instead becoming work-from-home AppleCare employees who answer customer service inquiries. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
GEP, AI-powered cloud-native digital transformation. Hundreds of Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies work with GEP to transform their procurement and supply chain operations. Why? GEP's unified digital platforms, smart, intuitive software that business users love, drive up adoption, user satisfaction, and productivity. GEP helps CIOs drive real digital transformation and achieve amazing results. GEP, helping the world's best companies do better.
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, we are awash in messages, but some messengers are more effective than others.
Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. We need 30,000.
Meanwhile, some media outlets choose not to air the president's press briefings live, and media critics ponder what's the right balance between good information and all information. All that and more on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you! I beg you to come down here right now!
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the body-slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, listen to Talk is Jericho. For these and more podcasts, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling. TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about.
Speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. News without analysis is like half a bridge.
Why is the debt to GDP ratio still so important?
Those things, once they're set in place, stay around for years.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio. To New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chehich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Roger, 30 minutes into the equity market open here in Europe after the worst quarter for global equities since the financial crisis. We start April in the red. The Stock 600 down almost 3.5%. Looking across regional equity benchmarks, the FTSE 100 down almost 4%. Same for the CAC 40. The DAX lower by 3.5%. IBEX and FTSE MIB both lower by at least 2%. US futures also point to a weak open. Dow, S&P and NASDAQ futures all lower by at least 2.5%. Investors seeming to take in the worsening figures on coronavirus cases out of the US. We did get a rebound in the Caixin manufacturing in China, but a worsening outlook for factories elsewhere in Asia. The 10-year Treasury yield is slipping 7 basis points now. We're below a 60 handle at 59 basis points. The 10-year Bund yield down 5 basis points to negative 52. The 10-year gilt yield dropped 6 basis points as well. So a definite risk-off tone across markets as well. That's also being reflected by a stronger dollar. You've got the Aussie, Canadian and Kiwi all underperforming against the greenback in today's session. Of course, we've got the repo lifeline from the Fed. Will that do anything to ease liquidity pressures? The Bloomberg Dollar Index up 0.6% after the best quarter since 2016 for the Bloomberg Dollar Index. And oil's been fluctuating a bit in today's session. Right now, you're seeing WTI down 0.5% at $37 a barrel. President Trump has talked about having conversations with Russia and Saudi Arabia, but it's really the demand side that's causing concern for investors. And in more evidence yet of risk off and bid for havens, gold up 1%, $1,594 an ounce, Roger.
Right, well, let's go on to some of today's top stories. US health officials estimate up to 240,000 Americans could die from coronavirus, and President Trump has warned of a tough 2 weeks ahead. Fatalities in New York City now are over 1,000. Italy's new infections leveled at a 2-week low. Globally, more than 859,000 people are infected, and there are at least 42,300 dead.
Here in the UK, top officials now accept the country hasn't done enough to test for coronavirus. The Prime Minister's team is blaming a shortage of chemical components, and experts are struggling to agree on what to do next. Meanwhile, the UK Health Department says the first new ventilators will be delivered to the NHS at the weekend.
HSBC and Standard Chartered shares plunged in Hong Kong this morning after they scrapped dividends and buybacks urged on by the UK regulator. Barclays cancelled a payment of more than £1 billion that was due to be distributed on Friday. RBS and Banco Santander's UK unit made similar moves. Britain's 5 biggest banks had planned to pay out £7.5 billion over the next 2 months.
And unsurprisingly, Roger, we are seeing shares in Barclays, in HSBC and RBS all lower in today's session. And David Einhorn's hedge funds plummeted 12% in March. The declines left Einhorn's Greenlight Capital with a loss of more than 21% this year. This comes at a challenging time for Einhorn. His value style of investing has been mostly out of sync with markets in recent years. And speaking of legendary investors, Roger, we've also had a trifecta of those investors come out today and signal warnings on markets. So you've got Double Line's Jeffrey Gundlach saying that the presumption of a V-shaped recovery is too optimistic. We haven't yet seen the bottom for the S&P 500. Oaktree's Howard Marks saying that investor pessimism is just waiting to rear its head. And Jim Rogers expecting the worst bear market of his lifetime in the next 2 years.
Certainly a lot of gloom out there. Well, let's catch up with the latest in global news with Leanne Gerrans. And Leanne, you start with the global picture of the virus.
Yes, Roger. Indeed, good morning. As the number of coronavirus cases globally continues to rise, with the latest Johns Hopkins tally recording more than 42,000 deaths. In Italy, the number of new coronavirus cases leveled off, hitting a 2-week low. But a mystery remains as to how a country with 60 million people has had more deaths than any other nation in the world. The Italian health ministry says one possible clue lies in the low flu deaths in 2019 and 2020. Before the coronavirus outbreak, flu mortality among the elderly was indeed below average, which made that group more vulnerable when the current pandemic did hit. In its latest attempt to try to protect Spaniards from the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic, the government has announced new rules. Bloomberg's Rodrigo Orihuela has the details.
That seek to protect renters from landlords by freezing rents and blocking evictions for 6 months. Tuesday marked the deadliest day since the outbreak started in Spain, with 838 fatalities in 24 hours, amid a countrywide lockdown that is already in its 3rd week. Madrid, Rodrigo Orihuela, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Now, Denis Protsenko, the doctor who last week gave Russian President Vladimir Putin a tour of Moscow's main coronavirus hospital, has been diagnosed with the illness. Bloomberg's Jake Rudnitsky has more.
Putin, who wasn't wearing any protective gear when he met and shook hands with Protsenko, is regularly tested and is fine, according to a Kremlin spokesman. Protsenko has been the face of Moscow's battle with coronavirus for many Russians, thanks to his regular social media posts. In the week since his meeting with Putin, Moscow has gone on lockdown. In Moscow, Jake Rudnitsky, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And here in the UK, 70 pregnant women and mothers will be released from prison early to combat the coronavirus crisis. The Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, has given the plan the green light. The women are to be released within days after checks to ensure they do not pose a risk of harm to the public. Prison governors will be able to grant their release on temporary license. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Roger.
Leanne, thank you for that. Now, the US plans meetings with Russia and Saudi Arabia to try to staunch an historic plunge in oil prices. The commodity had its worst ever quarter amid a double whammy of virus restrictions eroding demand and a damaging war for market share between Riyadh and Moscow. And further volatility to be expected from today as OPEC plus output curbs end. Indeed, it's they can drill as much as they want. Current price, just to give you, is WTI 20.38 right now. Let's bring in Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Horden. Anne-Marie, good morning. Thanks for being with us. Now, give us a sense of where this is now. We've been talking about oil prices for quite a while, it seems, but is there any sign of an end or a bottom to this dispute?
No, quite the opposite, actually, Roger, and good morning. The world is literally running out of space to put this surplus that we have. And today marks the day that historic deal struck in 2016 between Riyadh and Moscow coming to the end. These massive producers can pump at will, but where does it all go? IHS is talking about, and a lot of consultants are talking about, that supply may exceed demand by more than 12 million barrels a day in the second quarter. So unless something is done, and even if something is done, what Jeff Curry was talking about yesterday, there still is serious demand destruction, and that's what we're coming up against. Vitol CEO told me last week he's seeing as much as 20 million barrels a day coming off the market. Goldman Sachs was talking about 26 million barrels a day this week they've seen as towns are quarantined, flights are grounded. That's about shutting China off twice. That's 0.25% of the world's oil demand, so it's serious weakness on the demand side.
Yeah, and Anne-Marie, that's the point Goldman is making, isn't it? That even if there was any agreement to cut output, it's likely too late. It would fall short of the loss in consumption. And meanwhile, you've got industry analysts talking about a potentially apocalyptic April. What do they mean when they say apocalyptic April? I mean, are negative oil prices on the cards at all?
I think you could see negative, and we have seen this in one obscure place for the market in the United States, when you're talking about physical barrels. So when you're looking at WTI and Brent on your terminal, you're looking at these spot future prices, right? But actually in the market, when you're looking at physical prices, we're seeing some oil trade for under $10 a barrel. And that's already, we're seeing in the United States, hit the gasoline stations. In some cities, you're seeing gasoline under $1. That's what President Trump was talking about yesterday. He was saying how some places you're seeing 99 cents. And apocalyptic really for April's because we're having this surge of supply, and at the same time, the storage capacity is filling up. We're weeks, months away from being, top level on storage around the world.
So when do we start seeing US shale companies start to fold? Because there has to be a big problem for them.
Yeah, it's a really good question. We've already seen a number of them either be cut by like S&P or Fitch, and as well as a lot of them talking about indirectly the changes they're going to have to make. Like Vicky Holub at Occidental was talking about serious changes, kind of insinuating potentially job cuts. That's what this industry is coming up against. It is going to, this supply war and demand destruction is basically claiming shale as a massive victim. And you're already hearing it from the Texas commissioners and also the pipeline companies that are saying to producers, you need to ratchet back some of this production because we cannot hold it anymore. There is no more space.
Anne-Marie Horden, great to have you with us. Thank you so much. And we've also seen Italy and Spain pointing to the staggering oil demand hit from COVID-19 there. Oil demand has collapsed amid nationwide lockdowns. Both those countries, of course, in Europe having been among the hardest hit by the coronavirus. Roger, up next, we will talk more about Europe and global markets with David Owen, Chief European Economist at Jefferies. He joins us next. Meanwhile, we are kicking off April in the red for global equities. US futures pointing to a down day in the US session. The Stock 600 down 3.4%. This is Bloomberg.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Investors who put their money on the line to help build U.S. infrastructure deserve to be protected. That's what we do at BAM. Our unconditional guarantee means investors receive every payment of interest and principal when due, period. BAM-insured bonds have a high AA stable rating from S&P, and BAM credit profiles provide complete transparency on each and every transaction. BAM-insured bonds help build America's essential public projects. BAM, the feeling is mutual.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city in the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high.
Tonight, it's a Lotto triple rollover. Don't miss out. Play your numbers online or on the app today. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
The pressure washer that means your patio is barbecue ready. The 4K projector that brings the thrill of the cinema to you. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of your leisure time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
On this week's On the Media, we are awash in messages, but some messengers are more effective than others.
Ventilators, ventilators, ventilators. We need 30,000.
Meanwhile, some media outlets choose not to air the president's press briefings live, and media critics ponder what's the right balance between good information and all information. All that and more on this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about. The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you! I beg you to come down here right now!
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large,